Hey y'all, it's your boy Colin, coming at you live with some news from some of the fellows up in Westport, Connecticut. Now, if you haven't been to Westport, Connecticut, there's a good reason for that. That means you are not a gajillionaire. But once a year, the gajillionaires feel the need to have a essay contest in their high school about what awful racist people they are. And this year, the contest was won by a 15-year-old black kid whose essay was all about how white people suck. They're always messing with black people for no reason whatsoever. And when he gave this little speech in his class and to the good citizens of Westport, they couldn't cheer for it loudly enough. Okay, so I wasn't going to do the whole thing, but you know what? Let's just do the whole speech. It's only about 4 minutes long. And I don't know that we should go around holding teenagers to whatever it is they say for the rest of their life. But the fact is, this teenager, what he says is a perfect representation of so much else that's being said. And the reaction is such a perfect representation of so much reaction that to these accusations of white racism, all the white people in the room are clapping. Oh, isn't that nice? That little fellow just called us a bunch of racist and evil people. And we are all down with that. So let's check out that. But then let's go into the Flaherty files. Let's check out a couple of examples of black criminality wildly out of proportion that even bright people like this young black person in Westport, Connecticut have trouble explaining.
The colors of privilege. It was second period, and our U.S. history class quieted once the bell rang. So not just because of the bell. Our classroom, usually busy with thought-provoking conversations, was anxiously anticipating the lecture today on racial equality. My teacher was thankful to have at least some diversity in the classes here. We three African American students in the same classroom at Staples High School was a rare sight, since our town is 92.6% white and just 1.2% black. She explained how most years, when addressing the issues of race in the classroom, she would get to use the line, "Let's ask all the black people in the class," to a silent room. Her joke broke the ice, and we dove into a thoughtful discussion about race relations in Fairfield County, Connecticut. In the midst of our discussion, a student raised her hand to add an anecdote about seeing another student from another high school holding a sign at a football game. She said that on the sign was written, "Ward High School has N-words." Except she used the actual word in U.S. history class, in our 92.6% white Fairfield County suburb. My body froze. Time stopped. I never did hear the end of her story. The air became viscous and the tension in the room felt palpable. The teacher deftly interjected to continue the flow of the conversation, pointing out the power of sometimes confronting such ugliness head on. But for the rest of the class, I sat stunned. I knew the student hadn't used the word in a malicious way, but the response from my body was primal. The N-word is a word that takes African Americans back to 1619 on the tobacco fields of Jamestown and the very beginnings of the American tragedy of human enslavement. It reminds us of Jim Crow and of the senseless beating of Rodney King and the killings of 258 black people by the police in 2016. Nevertheless, several of my white friends want to use the N-word in recounting their favorite lyrics. Others even claim that it's reverse racism to keep them from saying it. They, like the student in my class, don't understand how this word takes my breath away. As a black teen in Westport, race issues in and outside the classroom are unavoidable. One afternoon at track practice, some white friends were discussing how hard it would be to get into college. And then, out of nowhere, someone said, "Chet, you don't have this problem because you're black." I was stunned and I mumbled instead of firing back. "Your parents are third-generation Princeton, and your father runs the hedge fund, and yet you think my ride is free?" Even seemingly safe discussions about our sport can be racial minefields. I remember a terrific runner on our team saying after he lost, "I mean, I was running against two giant black guys," and the other teammates nodded with understanding. All of this casual black envy doesn't take into account American history. A history where slavery and segregation were the law, and black inferiority the unwritten law. In 1940, an experiment was conducted by Kenneth and Mamie Clark to help understand the psychological effects of segregation on children. Today, this study is colloquially known as the doll tests. In these tests, students would be given 2 identical dolls except for their color and asked which one they liked more and which one was more pretty. An overwhelming amount of participants from both black and white communities chose the white doll. My own doll test occurred in the 5th grade when I moved to Westport from Manhattan, where I thought I was upper middle class. I would look up at all the houses bigger than our rental and imagine what life would be if I was born lighter and richer. I had no grasp of the deep social issues that had been keeping my people from attaining such heights and prosperity. Didn't yet understand the lack of truly wealthy black residents in my town as indicative of a larger social issue. Now, as a sophomore in high school, I have a better understanding of the legacy of institutionalized racism. Now, I see the history behind the big houses. I see my 5th grade envy mirrored in my classmates' jealousy of how fast I can run or how high I can jump. I know my classmates know about the deep social issues that African Americans have had to face and are still facing today, but in our peaceful bedroom community, that struggle is not present on a day-to-day basis. Students get blinded at the thought that a student could get into college more easily because of the color of their skin, while not saying that African Americans are twice as likely to be unemployed, and once employed earn nearly 25% less than their white counterparts. They don't see that despite making up 12% of the population, they are 35% of the inmates in jail and 24% of the people shot by police officers. Honestly, I've never really thought about white privilege until I moved into Westport. From a young age, I was taught that not everything was meant to be fair and to deal with it. But living in this place where almost everyone is white makes me question, when I'm in Walgreens and the manager follows me around the store, would this happen if I looked different? Now I see the need to speak out, to address white privilege when it happens, so that people know that it is real despite their best intentions. Like the girl in my class pointing out the despicable sign at the football game. We need to make sure that there is an open discourse that includes a more diverse history and sensitivity to each other. In our town, it is impossible to have 3 black students in every class, but maybe we should all imagine that they are there just the same, and that they will speak out.
Surveillance video from a home in Pearland shows thieves storming in with guns drawn. Now the family is living in fear, hoping the bad guys are captured soon. Here's Marcelino Benito.
Right. On the regular Saturday, my kids would have been over here just playing, watching cartoons.
But last Saturday was different. Inside Viet Vo's Pearland home, the family was out when 3 brazen crooks.
They kicked the door in at 6:40.
They storm in with guns drawn, as if expecting a confrontation. But the second they busted through the door, the alarm started to sound. The bold burglars started to panic.
Someone could have got killed. You know, all 3 of them had guns. If you see on the thing, they had guns all drawn out. They were ready to shoot.
On surveillance cameras, you can see how they circled the first floor a couple times.
All the way around here.
And after a quick run upstairs, they decide to flee out the very door they just broke down.
My neighbor heard the alarm from all the way from his house, and he came out.
That neighbor whipped out his cell phone and captured another glimpse of the burglars, casually walking down the street, guns still in hand, towards the getaway driver.
And they didn't take nothing, but it's scary.
That quick-thinking neighbor managed to catch a glimpse of the getaway car, too, a white Ford Focus that jets out of the neighborhood before police arrive. Now, Vo and Pearland police hope someone recognizes who these guys are.
Could have been bad if we were home. Yeah, thank God we wasn't home, so.
Now, another home off of Harris Avenue had been burglarized last week, but at this point, investigators do not think the same men are behind that home invasion.
In just 1 second, his life changed forever.
Gotta keep pushing through.
Now in a hospital bed, Michael Nelson can't stop reliving that night. He just clocked out as a cook at the Green Beetle, a popular bar and grill, and walked to his car parked just feet away on Vance. He climbed in.
When all of a sudden, the young man jumped into the passenger seat with the young female. She jumped into the back seat. Both pointed their pistols at me.
Nelson didn't fight it, handed them his car keys and phone. But that wasn't enough.
Heard a pop, felt a sharp jab in my back, actually tapped my leg, and my leg just kind of slumped over.
Nelson fell to the ground, crawled to the middle of the street.
The bullet had apparently punctured my lung a little bit, so when I tried to scream, it was more, help, help.
He watched the criminals, who changed his life forever, casually walk away.
I grabbed my phone, called my mother up, told her I loved her, I'd been shot.
That bullet pierced Nelson's third vertebrae, pierced through his small and large intestine, and punctured his lung. He spent the next week in the ICU.
If they needed money, if they needed something, hell, I would have gotten them a job at the Green Beetle if it came down to it, you know?
Nelson is now in physical therapy, thankful for his life and the support shown by his coworkers, the community, and strangers.
As soon as you lose hope, that's when you kind of give up.
Doctors don't know if he'll ever walk again.
I'm not going to give up.
Only time will tell.
They're putting out an alert after an elderly woman was attacked in a parking lot. A suspect jumped in the 83-year-old victim's car in East Rockaway and tried to hold the woman against her will. It comes just one day after a similar incident involving an 85-year-old woman in Westbury. Eyewitness News reporter Sandra Bookman is in East Rockaway with details. Sandra?
Yes, Sade, 2 days, 2 incidents in parking lots, 2 female seniors victimized. Police say at this point, they simply can't not connect these incidents.
We never encountered anything here. It always seemed fairly safe.
But that sense of security among customers in this supermarket parking lot may have been shattered yesterday morning when a man accosted an 83-year-old woman as she put her groceries in the car. He first offered to take away her shopping cart, but then jumped into the passenger seat and grabbed her. The terrified woman broke free, got out of the car, and screamed for help. The man fled.
This area is a good area, you know, but I guess trouble travels.
And that's exactly what worries Nassau County Police. In a similar incident Sunday, a knife-wielding man grabbed an 85-year-old woman from a Walmart parking lot in Westbury, forced her to give up bank card information and cash, and finally dropped her off 11 miles away. Could it be the same man?
Very, very strong similarities. At this point, we cannot state conclusively that it is the same person.
This is a sketch of the suspect wanted in the Westbury incident. The description in both very similar. Tall, thin build, wearing a dark baseball cap. 2 incidents in 2 days, but police aren't yet calling this a pattern.
At this time, it's unknown, but the definite target is elderly females, we believe, and the need for a currency of money.
Some Nassau County residents not overly alarmed.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of bad people running around still in this world. Wish it wasn't that way, but what do, you know? You just try to avoid it and keep doing what you have to do.
And one other thing I wish Mr. Super Genius from Westport, Connecticut would have explained to us, racially unenlightened, stupid old white men, is whatever happened to Sage Steele? Here's a story that's talking about her being fired or reassigned at ESPN for some controversial comments, the most controversial of which were one they show here in this clip and one they don't. The one was, "Hey, Colin Kaepernick, get off your knees, you loser. Respect the flag, respect the cops." But I don't even think that's even close to the most controversial comment, because what Sage Steele said is something that we have done on this channel and on my radio show and in my book more than a dozen times. And it's something I got from Crystalline Karazin and her book Swirling. It's a book for black women telling them to date white men because black men are not marriage material. Anyway, here's what Sage Steele said about being married to a white guy. She's black. "The worst racism that I have received, and I mean thousands and thousands of times over the years, is from black people, who in my mind I thought would be the most accepting because there has been that experience," she said during a conference on race at a church. "But even as recent as the last couple of weeks, the words that I have had thrown at me I cannot repeat here, and it's 99% from people with my skin color." What about that, Brainiac? Well, that's it, y'all. No more speechifying for today. And if you go to a little lecture in Westport, Connecticut, where one of the fellas is telling you that you're an awful person, that everything you have is just a gift. You didn't build that. You're just a child of privilege. You don't deserve anything you have because you're white. If you find yourself in one of those rooms, I would suggest you sit on your hands, and the only time you may remove your hands is when you need them to clap enthusiastically about this person spreading the greatest lie of our generation, because if you do anything else, that will make